Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay and I'm a counselor here at MoonPrep, and I want to welcome everyone to applying to BSMD, direct medical programs, everything you need to know. So today we're going to cover everything from classes you should take to extracurricular activities, literally anything that you might want to consider before BSMD admissions. But before we get too far into it, I want to take a minute to introduce myself and MoonPrep. So I'm Lindsay and I'm a counselor at MoonPrep. I actually started off as an SAT AC tutor and then got involved with students by helping them with their personal statements and then coaching them in the narrative form of writing, and now I'm also a counselor. And a little bit about us in general. So we do one-on-one guidance throughout the admissions process. So we work with one student, completely customized, completely personalized, working with them remotely with students all around the world. And our specialty is direct medical programs, which is why we're doing this webinar. We also work with students who are in the Ivy Leagues or applying for the Ivy Leagues. And then a lot of our work is with helping them write the personal statement as well as essays. And so if you want to check out our website, it's moonprep.com, or you can shoot us an email at hello@moonprep.com. So you can either, set up a one-on-one call with us to learn more about our services, or, just check out some of our blogs and our articles and some of the other resources we have on our website. And I'm also really excited because, here we go. We are about to publish a book, and I'll be emailing it to everyone who signed up through Eventbrite. And if you didn't sign up through Eventbrite, make sure just to send us an email at hello@moonprep.com, and I'll have that email pop up at the end as well in my own personal email. Send us an email, and we'll send you a free copy of the Kindle once it publishes. It should be going up this month, so it's pretty exciting stuff. It covers everything you need to know about the BSMD programs. It's 250 pages. It's got every single BSMD program, every single BSDO program. It's got it all. So it will be published this month on Amazon, and it will be free for a limited time. So if you didn't sign up through Eventbrite, make sure to send me an email, and I'll make sure you get your free copy. Well, that's that. So as we go along, also, please feel free to type any questions you have in the chat. I'll save some time at the end for a little bit of a Q&A, and we can, answer your questions, any specifics you might have about BSMD admissions. Now, let's see. We'll be talking about, these topics. And like I said, if you have any other questions that aren't related to BSMD, that are related to something that we didn't cover, make sure to ask me about it. Here we go. But first, before we get too far into it, let's talk about what a BSMD program is. So a lot of you guys probably already know, but a BSMD program is also known as BSMD, BAMD, BSDO, or BADO. It's got a lot of different names. They're some of the most competitive programs in the college admissions process. And when an undergraduate institution partners with a medical school, it basically guarantees the student can complete their undergraduate studies and then continue to the partnered medical school. Now, for high schoolers who already know that they are 100% committed to becoming a doctor, this type of program is likely a really good choice. Students can get accepted to a medical school at the same time as undergraduate programs, and it just gives them kind of a distinct advantage over their peers. Instead of having to stress all 4 years of their undergraduate career, they know that they've already secured a spot as long as they continue meeting the requirements. Now, combined programs will typically last 8 years, 4 years spent at the undergraduate institution and 4 years at the medical school. However, there are some accelerated options where you can complete your schooling in 6 or 7 years. Each program is different, so make sure to research the length of programs before applying. There's no right or wrong program. It just depends on your learning style, how quickly you want to go through it, and how fast. We'll kind of talk about that a little bit later on in our presentation. And also, it's really important to note that direct medical programs do change every single year. New ones appear, other ones get shut down. So if you are looking at lists online, make sure that it's really recent, and then you also go on the school's website and verify that information. If you go on our website, moonprep.com, you can find a complete list of BSMD programs. We update it whenever we find out that a program might have been shut down or started up. And as well as in our Kindle book, you'll see the complete list with more details as well. Now, many students want to go through a BSMD program just to avoid that hassle of applying to medical school. Getting into medical school has always been competitive, and it has gotten even more so in recent years. So even the so-called easy ones are difficult to get into without proper preparation. Now, one of the most well-known and competitive BSMD programs in the country is Brown's PLME. And for the 2019-2020 admission cycle, there were 2,600 applicants, but only 94 students were granted a spot, which means the acceptance rate was just around 3%. And then we see kind of the same story at RPI, at their physician scientist program. 38 students out of 550 applicants were accepted this past admissions round, so about 7%. And then Rice and Baylor in the Baylor to Medical Track program, there were only 6 lucky candidates for his BSMD program each year. So it's really competitive. Very few students are accepted. And as you can kind of see, you have to be the best of the best. Just as a little comparison, Harvard University's acceptance rate for its undergraduate class of 2023 was 4.6%. So getting into a BSMD program can be harder than getting into some of the most selective universities in the country. And throughout this advice in this webinar, we're just kind of here to help you beat the odds and jumpstart your journey to becoming a doctor right out of high school. So let's see. But first, let's kind of cover the advantages. So these might be kind of obvious. You already know that you don't get into medical school. When you're accepted, you are automatically matriculating into the partner medical school as long as you meet the minimum requirements. And that relieves a ton of pressure. The minimum GPA you have to get is around like a 3.5. But if you were going to apply to medical school the traditional route, your GPA would likely have to be somewhere in like the 3.7 or higher realm. So that's a lot more pressure that you would have to put on yourself. And to get accepted into medical school, you're just going to be held to a really high academic standard. Your science-based classes are really heavily scrutinized. So it can be a lot of pressure over those 4 years. Now, this doesn't mean that you can slack off if you're accepted into a BSMD program. 3.5 in college, taking really intense science courses is still pretty intense. So if your grades slip below the minimum, you will be placed on probation and then likely kicked out of the program. Now, another advantage is that you have greater academic freedom. So once you receive your direct acceptance into the medical school, you might feel like you can study a greater variety of subject matters. So instead of having to focus only on science-based courses to really impress the medical school admissions officers, you might feel like you can explore some of your other interests, like the humanities. But of course, if you are in a 6 or 7 year program, you might not have a similar experience. Because the material is accelerated, you likely have more limited free time to explore your outside interests. So that's just kind of something to consider. And another advantage, and this is often a big one, is you might not be required to take the MCAT. So the MCAT is kind of the dreaded admissions test for medical school. Students will spend upwards of 300 hours studying for the MCAT. 3 to 4 months of your life, studying more than 21 hours a week. It's time consuming, it's stressful, and it's something that most doctors wish they didn't have to go through. And some BSMD programs either have, just a minimum score you have to hit, or no minimum requirements, or you don't have to take it at all. And you also might have access to unique opportunities as a BSMD student. You might be able to attend special lectures, get certain fellowships, clubs. There might be activities that you get access to a little bit faster than your normal peers. And of course, it can save time if it's an accelerated program. Going from high school to an MD in 6 years is quick. So you'll be able to become a practicing physician much faster than your peers. And in addition, you'll save time because you don't have to go through the medical school application process. The average student applies to 17 medical schools. And so that means personal statements, secondary essays, interviews, all just to get hopefully a coveted spot at a medical school. And kind of like the last advantage here is BSMD programs can help you save money. So if you're participating in an accelerated program, you only have to pay for 6 years instead of 8. And in addition, you don't have to deal with the expense of applying to schools. Applying to medical school might cost between $5,000 and $10,000 between MCATs, prep, MCAT preparing for the course, applications, fees, applying to interviews, interview close, all of this kind of stuff adds up really quickly. So with a BSMD program, you can avoid some of those additional expenses. So as you can see, there are a lot of really good reasons why these BSMD programs are so competitive. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have its flaws. So there are some downsides. And one of those is that it is harder to transfer medical schools. So once you're accepted into a BSMD program, you are committed to spending 6 to 8 years at a specific undergraduate and then a specific medical school. And as you progress, you might realize that the learning style isn't quite right for you, the curriculum or the environment isn't quite right. And it can be kind of challenging to transfer to a new medical school. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind. In addition, the undergraduate application process is more arduous, more lengthy than a regular traditional application process. Because first you have to get accepted into the undergraduate program, of course, and you have to write the university-specific programs, the university-specific essays, but then you also have to write the BSMD program admissions essays. So that's just kind of something else that does take a little bit more time and something that seems to always surprise our BSMD students when they realize how many essays they have to write. And in another way kind of varies is the interview process is really kind of intense as well. You might have an initial phone or Skype interview, and then oftentimes you have an in-person interview as well. And it's just more intense. You might have a different format than you're used to, and you often don't even find out that you're accepted until March. So you have to spend kind of months waiting and seeing when you'll get in. And then this can be a disadvantage, but the graduation requirements of accelerated programs, because it can be so hard to, the reason it can be so hard to transfer is due to those requirements of the program. And this is more geared towards accelerated programs because you might spend just 3 years at the undergraduate or 2.5 years at the undergraduate program, but you still don't often receive your undergraduate diploma until the 4th year of studying, even if you progress to medical school material. So if you do decide to transfer medical schools, you might have to repeat a couple years of classes. So that can be a little bit frustrating. And in addition, if you do decide that medicine isn't right for you and you're in an accelerated program, that can also be tricky because you might not have hit the graduation requirements of your undergraduate program yet. So that's just kind of something to consider before you commit to an accelerated program. And in addition, the undergraduate universities sometimes can be less competitive. So for a high school student who's competitive enough to get into a direct medical program, it likely means that they have what it takes to get into medical school. These students are going to be hardworking, passionate about medicine, and they tend to be good test takers. And numerous BSMD programs are at universities that might be considered, safety schools for such high achieving students. And of course, it's not always the case. We have like Northwestern, we have Brown, we have some really great schools that have BSMD programs, but there are some schools that are more, safety. And in this case, the student needs to ensure that they'll be able to graduate from the BSMD program, and that's something that they want to commit to. Otherwise, they're kind of attending an undergraduate institution that might not have been their top choice if it hadn't been for the BSMD component. So it's really important to consider both the undergraduate component and the medical school component. And as I already mentioned, it's hard to get accepted. BSMD programs are just insanely competitive. Many programs accept 20 or less students out of hundreds or even thousands of applications. You have to be the absolute best of the best to get accepted to a top program. And building up a strong candidacy does take years to do so. And this type of application process, this type of program, you really shouldn't take it lightly. So we're going to talk at length kind of how you can prepare properly. But first, let's talk about when to start preparing. So to help you on your path to becoming a doctor, we've put together a timeline to build up your academic profile to get you accepted into a competitive BSMD program. And it's kind of important to remember it will take more than a couple of months to be competitive enough and to convey your strong desire to become a doctor, as well as just gather all of the necessary pieces of the application. Now, this timeline that is listed on the screen and that I'm going to talk about, it's not a strict, inflexible timeline that you need to follow to get accepted because your journey to medicine is unique. Just use this timeline kind of as a guide to support you on your journey to become a doctor. And it is okay if you start the process a little bit later than others. That's not going to be the end of the world. But the important thing here is that your freshman year, you should take a challenging course load. And while colleges might seem like it's far away when you're a freshman, you shouldn't let your grades drop. If your school has advanced placement courses, especially in the math or science field, we recommend that you take 1 or 2 each semester. And during your freshman year, this is kind of the time to explore your activities. Focus your energy on science-related activities, but also use this year to discover what your passions are. You don't have to 100% commit right now. Just try and figure out what you really enjoy. And it's really important that you use your summer wisely. So you should try and find a volunteer position in a hospital, a clinic, or a nursing home, or something like that. Starting to build a relationship with others and giving back to your community. Showing empathy, as you can imagine, is really important to have as a doctor. Now, by your sophomore year, you should be continuing to take advantage of the courses offered by your school. So focus your subjects around science, math, technology, really anything in like the STEM field. And once you feel like you mastered these subjects, then I recommend that you take the SAT subject tests. A lot of schools, this year it's going to be a little bit different, but a lot of times in the past, some BSMD programs have required that you take it, and some undergraduate programs as well require that you take SAT subject tests. So it's kind of a good thing to have them kind of in your back pocket already. You don't have to worry about them your junior, senior year. And even if a college says that they recommend you or that they're not required, a strong test score will only show that you've mastered a difficult course. So it's not the end of the world if you do take the SAT subject test and you do well. They're going to see it and they're going to see that you did well. Starting your sophomore year, you should also plan to prepare for the SAT or ACT and try to take it maybe your spring semester or the summer, because we want to make sure that you have a lot of time to retake it if you don't get the score you wanted. And this is really important because BSMD programs, you need to have a really great SAT and ACT score to get accepted. So you might need a couple chances, and that's okay. And starting your sophomore year, start to narrow your focus a little bit about your extracurricular activities. You shouldn't continue 10 plus activities. And in fact, it's better if you don't, because how can you be so deeply involved in so many activities at once? And instead, it's kind of better to concentrate on positioning yourself into leadership positions and taking on more responsibility in just the activities that you're passionate about. And I see a question about COVID-19 and limited opportunities. I'm going to go into that at length. That's a really great question because, a lot of this is talking about in a good time, in a normal time, but that's not kind of how it is right now. So if you're kind of planning for the future, you're a freshman or sophomore, even younger right now and kind of preparing, then you do have time, hopefully, to kind of take advantage of the more traditional activities. But I'll go into COVID the plans later. And during the summer of your junior year, now is kind of the time that you should start to seek out research opportunities and, go into a lab, see if you can, start to conduct research, shadow physicians, building clinical and research experiences. Now, if you are a junior, this is your last full school year before you apply to colleges, as you might have guessed. If you have any missing pieces of your application, now is the time to get everything in order. So you should continue to take challenging courses and make sure that you're concentrating your energy on getting good grades. And during the summer, you can spend some time researching in a lab, kind of with the ultimate goal of being able to present or publish your findings. And even if you aren't able to do this, you can find summer camps dedicated to research in STEM or pre-doctor studies. And so a lot of these will have deadlines in the late winter, and you don't want to miss an opportunity just because you weren't paying attention to deadlines. So start preparing now. And even during coronavirus, a lot of these summer camps that are dedicated to research or STEM or pre-doctor studies, a lot of them have moved virtual. So that's kind of something you would still want to consider. A lot of them have moved virtual for the summer. If the coronavirus is still going on next summer, then they're already prepared to move virtual again. So this is kind of when you can start applying. A lot of those applications open up November, December, and are due in January, February. So thinking about those now is kind of key. And starting your junior year, if you have to take the SAT or ACT again, now's kind of the time. You want to make sure you have the right score that you want before you start applying. And so because you don't want to have to be concentrating on taking the test again rather than preparing for the SAT or ACT. College is kind of going to be your focus now. And then of course, the summer before your senior year, it's time to start to prepare your college list. So right now, if you are a rising senior, you should be researching various BSMD programs, making sure that you meet all the requirements before applications even open. And actually, you can get a head start working on your personal statement during the summer. So the Common App has already released the personal statement prompts. And this is a 650-word essay that you want to showcase who you are, showcase your really great qualities. And if you can get this done before school starts, you can concentrate on the many supplemental essays you'll have to complete. And we've actually created a course on writing the personal statement. So I can send that to you guys in a follow-up email. And once again, if you didn't sign up through Eventbrite, I'll pull the emails from there. But if you didn't, just send me an email either at hello@moonprep.com, and I'll put my email in the chat at the end as well. So you guys can email me any questions you might have, and make sure you get those good resources as well. And then if you are a rising senior, this is kind of the summer when you should start at least attending maybe virtual college fairs. Hopefully in future years, if you're a rising senior, you can actually go and visit colleges. It is really important to at least virtually visit. I know it's not the same, but you can do, either colleges will offer them, or you can look on YouTube to see some virtual tours, just any way you can get a good view of the school. It's really hard to make choices though about where you're going to spend all your next 4 to 8 years of your life. So try and do as much research as possible, and virtual tours aren't ideal, but it can be the best in this situation. Now, by the time senior year comes, it's kind of your crunch time, because it's your last chance to showcase your strong commitment to becoming a doctor. So BSMDs are time consuming. You might be writing 45 or more essays. And so, you got to work really quickly. You got to be strategic. You got to be making sure that you're showcasing who you are in these essays. And then starting your junior year, starting January of your senior year, that's kind of when interviews might start. And the decisions don't come until March, which can be, nerve-wracking, because a lot of other students have already figured out where they're going and committed and paid down their enrollment deposits. But for a BSMD student, you have to sit and wait a little bit longer. And then in a typical year, you'll have until May 1st. Of course, you had a little bit longer this year, so who knows what it'll be like in future years, what the coronavirus situation will be like. But you'll have until a set deadline to make your decision. Now, everything I just said is kind of a sample timeline. Each student has to find their way, and as long as you are well-rounded and have experience that reiterate your desire to become a doctor, you'll give yourself the best chance to gain a seat in a competitive BSMD program. Now, another really important part here is building your academic profile. And this kind of, I think, goes against what a lot of students that we see come, might do, is they might take every single AP class, every single honors class that they have available to them. But that's not the only thing that's necessary. A high GPA isn't the only thing that matters when applying to BSMD schools. They are looking at, the course rigor, course selection, and class rank, if your high school still ranks their students. And of course, standardized test scores. These are all considered before a student is admitted into the program. And that means you should be taking advantage of the opportunities your school offers you. So if your school has, 10 AP or honors classes and you only take one, they might be wondering, okay, why didn't you do more? And so it's kind of really important to target your class schedule. Focus mostly on science classes. You should be taking advanced placements courses like biology, physics, and chemistry, and that sort of thing. And a big thing really is avoiding grade inflation. So the admission officers know what you're doing, and they're not going to be fooled by like an overly high GPA that lacks difficult science and math courses. If you're kind of taking, an easier AP that's not related to a STEM field, that's not going to impress them as much. They care more about what types of classes you took than having the highest GPA possible. And it's important to remember that you don't have to take every AP course available because there just isn't enough time in the day. Taking every AP course won't help you improve your resume. Instead, we kind of recommend that you take a few AP courses and then focus on the ones related to your intended field of science. Concentrate on getting the best score possible on those exams and in the classes. So that's kind of something to consider as you're going along. And especially as a BSMD student, you really have to become more focused on science because even though you won't have to apply to medical school, that's still something that they'll consider as they want to know how strong you are at science. You don't want to become too overwhelmed with classes that aren't related to your upcoming major if you're taking unrelated AP classes. Like, of course, if you have like an interest in the humanities, go for it. That should be something. If you really love art history, take AP art history. But don't just take it because you think that's what the admissions officers want to see. Now, students that do get accepted into BSMD programs, they do tend to have high GPAs. So whenever you are looking at a list or looking at the minimum requirements advertised on the website, I don't want you to be fooled. Because, for example, like the University of Missouri, Kansas City's BSMD program, they have one of the lowest minimum unweighted GPA requirements at just 3.0. And so a lot of our parents come and say, oh, that one's a safety because our GPA is like, a 3.9 unweighted. So we're way beyond that. But the important thing to remember is that you will need a much higher GPA to be considered for the program. So on average, the unweighted GPA of students admitted into the program is 3.8. So it's a huge difference between what you might see as the minimum requirement as to what the average of the students is. So that's kind of an important thing to look at too whenever you're considering which BSMD program you might be related most likely to get into. Look at what the stats say. Does it say average GPA, average SAT score? Does it say minimum requirements? Minimum requirements don't necessarily mean that's what the students look like. Now, if you're worried that your grades are below average, it doesn't necessarily mean it's a deal breaker. The college admissions process is holistic, so every single aspect of your application is considered. So, if you have great leadership experience, if you've got great extracurriculars, if you've got a fantastic SAT or ACT score, all those kind of things will play a role in the application. However, even the best SAT score, the best extracurriculars, they can't save a really poor GPA for BSMD programs. So that's kind of something to consider. It just depends on how low. Everything is kind of unique to the student. So there's no one size fits all, though, of the perfect BSMD student. Now for extracurricular. So some of this will be kind of related to coronavirus and what you can be doing during this time period, because it is something that a lot of our students that we work with have questioned and want to find the right way to make sure that they're still conveying their interest, still getting extracurriculars done during the coronavirus era, because that's something that the admissions officers will look on really closely. And so a lot of, science fairs were canceled, sports were canceled, science bowl competitions were canceled. All of these things might have been postponed, and who knows what will happen in the fall as well. So it is important to kind of have a backup plan in case something, if the coronavirus continues on into the fall. Now, of course, like as a high school student, you have to juggle a lot of different activities, a lot of different classes. So using free time is really vital and essential. You want to make sure that you are developing your interests, taking time to nurture and develop those passions. And that takes time. So like I said before, you don't need to be doing everything. You just need to be finding something that you're really passionate about. Now, we do recommend that students concentrate on activities within their medical or science field. No one club or extracurricular is better than the other. Just find your passion, display your ability to make significant strides within that area of focus. So colleges will look at a large variety of aspects when they're sorting through the applications. They look at your academic, like the rigor of your courses and how well you've mastered it. If you seem to have a love for learning, leadership, sports skills, musical talents, extracurricular activities in general, any awards or recognitions, and much more. So students do need to try and perform above average in these cases. But they don't need to perform above average in all of these areas. And that's kind of where a lot of our students will backfire, because they're trying to be amazing at everything, and that's not necessary and it's unrealistic. So try and find a few activities that you really enjoy and excel at those. So of course, you hear a lot of the times that you should be well-rounded, but the reality is that it makes you kind of just one among thousands of applicants who have followed kind of the same strategy, working hard on their weaknesses to make sure that they're, good across all areas. They're well-rounded. Like the phrase "jack of all trades, master of none" definitely applies to BSMD applications. We've interviewed many different admissions officers for competitive programs, both medical school, summer camps, and BSMD programs, and all of them have stated the almost exact same thing in the exact same way, is that they don't want to see a student who does 10 to 15 different activities and just spends a couple of hours on this each week. It's actually better to spend a lot of time doing just a couple of activities and doing them well, because that's how you make an impact. So you don't have to join every single thing, because you think that, oh, well, everyone else is joining the HOSA, everyone else is joining DECA, everyone else is joining, the Red Cross Club. Yeah, you can do that if you want, but it's not necessary. So whenever the BSMD admissions officers are kind of choosing between a well-rounded student and one that's more, angular or pointy or spiky, you might have heard these terms. These are kind of a student who excels in one area. They demonstrate deep interest, they're really passionate, they have a talent, and that's kind of something that we suggest to our students, is they find their interest and then they take it a step further. And this can be something that they do even during the coronavirus era. And I'll go into some examples in a little bit. Well, colleges are really seeking specialists, and these are individuals who are really driven by one aspect or field that they devote all their time and attention to, while, of course, achieving outstanding results. So if admissions officers are choosing between a student who has passion and drive and demonstrated skills, of course, that sounds really great, but they want to find someone who really takes that interest a step further. If you're well-rounded, you might be really good at a lot of things, but, you're not doing anything exceptionally well. So we want our students to become more angular and more pointy, and it might make you more unbalanced because you have a lot of interest related to one thing, and that's completely okay, because it actually improves your likelihood of standing out among the thousands of other applicants. So I'll kind of go into some examples in a little bit too. But the biggest thing to become more of a specialist, more angular than a generalist who's well-rounded, is to try and pass the WOW test. So what makes your activity stand out? If you were to tell your friends or neighbors about the activity that you were involved in, would it make them go, wow? That's what you kind of want them to do. You want them to pause and think wow, that's really cool. For example, today I just talked to a student who is really passionate about rock climbing, and he's been doing rock climbing for years, and he realized that a lot of the ropes that were being used for the rock climbing were getting thrown away because, of course, under regulations. because of his interest in rock climbing and also his love for dogs, he realized that he could upcycle these climbing ropes and make leashes. So he started a nonprofit, and he now makes leashes and donates the proceeds to animal shelters. So he took his interest and love of dogs and rock climbing, and combined them and made something. So that's exactly what you want to be doing. You want someone to remember what you did a year later. To really take those extracurriculars a step further. So for example, a few other kind of memorable stories are like one student that we worked with, he really loved to skateboard, and he started a club to teach neighborhood kids how to skateboard. And he also actually ran like a summer camp for low-income children. Then he expanded on this interest, started a nonprofit, and then now donates skateboards to underprivileged students. So yeah, all of his interests are around skateboards, but he took it, multiple steps further. Then I worked with another student last year who read a report on how the new release of iPhones might be connected to an increase in breast cancer and brain cancer due to the high levels of radiation that the phone emits. And so she created a 3D printed phone case that blocked radiation and won second place for a project at a science fair. So she took that interest and took it a step further. And then I have another student who spent his summers volunteering at clinics in India. And then while he was there, he saw that there just wasn't enough tools, but there were so many unused tools being thrown away in the United States. So he actually just founded a nonprofit that recycles these tools and then donates them to foreign hospitals. So you can kind of see all these students are standing out. They're creating something new. They're taking their interest a step further. And that's really what you can be doing now, even during the coronavirus era, is kind of trying to find an interest you might have and seeing how you can, take that interest and apply it to, a safe activity that you can do. So for example, like if you really love books and you love reading, you might set up like a book drive in your in your neighborhood. Put up flyers, say you'll collect the books that, between 5 and 7 on Tuesday and Wednesday, and then you can donate them to a shelter or to somewhere that might need the books. Or, you could do the same thing with like a food drive. Food banks are seeing huge increases in requests for food during this time. So you could do a food drive in your neighborhood. Once again, say you'll come collect the food. The people leave the food on the porches. You come collect it, or they can drop it off on your porch. Kind of depends on how you want to do it. And then, once it's all said and done, you track how much food you collected, track how much books you were able to donate. And that's, something that you could take and, put on your resume. And you could take that step, a step further. Once coronavirus is over, you can maybe work with the food bank. You could reach out to them and, see if they need help with marketing or social media or writing blogs, or, like anything that you can be doing virtually is kind of the ideal way. I have a student right now who has a virtual internship where he is working with a financial advisor, and now he's researching stocks and, giving advice on which stocks he thinks that people should be buying. So even though it's a coronavirus era, you can still be finding internships. You can be still, finding volunteer opportunities online. It's definitely still a possibility. I also had another student, I work with a lot of really cool students. I had another student who started his own nonprofit. He created a website. He and his friends, maybe like 3 or 4 friends, and they are tutoring online for free. So this actually might be like a really great thing that you either join an organization or you start your own, and a lot of parents are struggling with having their kids in a house and, keeping them amused while trying to work. So if you can tutor, a 10-year-old in basic maths, like that might be something you consider doing, because you can do it via Zoom. You can, share screen. You can talk to them through things. And, he created his own nonprofit through that. So there are a lot of little things that you can be doing now that maybe don't require you to be, face-to-face with people. And you can also kind of think a little bit smaller, and you can, do volunteering through like Meals on Wheels. Like I said before, a lot of those organizations have a lot of need for people right now. So you could be dropping off food at senior citizens' homes. And that would be, of course, something that you have to consider if it's safe for you or not, making sure that social distancing is still a thing. But there are a lot of virtual opportunities you can do right now. I know, for example, like right now, the Smithsonian is asking for like people who can digitally archive speeches and identify what things are, virtually and digitally. So that can be something, if you're really passionate about like history, you could go and do that for a summer and, become a volunteer. And depending on your age, if you're a little bit older, depending on the requirements are, you can do like contact tracing with the CDC, or you can become like a crisis counselor through different organizations. The Red Cross has a lot of virtual opportunities available. There's a lot of ways you can be making a difference, and it doesn't have to be, a groundbreaking idea. You don't have to be starting your own nonprofit, but you should be doing something during this time. And something else to consider too is like virtual camps. Those are really big. A couple that I can think of off like the top of my head are like this organization called Fadeable and Girls with Impact. Both of them are like virtual entrepreneur programs, and they help you come up with an idea. They help you market your idea, and you don't have to have a business idea. It can be like a medically focused idea. It can be a way that helps people. So, that could be a great way to spend your summer. They have, a 1-week crash course or 2-week crash course. So that could be something to consider, spending your time over the summer doing that, coming up with a business idea that can change people's lives, and, continuing with that idea throughout high school too. So I can send you guys that link in my follow-up email as well. I'll type them right here, right now. The ones to check out: Fadeable and Girls with Impact. Both of those are two very good organizations that we've, partnered with in the past, and I think, could really help you come up with some good ideas and activities during the summer. But, trying to stay virtual, I think, is a good one. But, back to kind of normal era. So if you're like a sophomore or freshman, you might be able to still squeeze in like a science fair. And that's kind of a really great way to get research, because having research is really vital and essential as a doctor. When, you're faced with a tricky diagnosis, they want to make sure that you've developed these skills so that you're kind of standing out amongst others. And so, you can recruit a local scientist or a research professor to kind of help you, be your mentor. And, that's someone that you could also ask for like a letter of recommendation when it comes to it, because you will have like a really great experience with them. And as you come up with ideas for your research idea, for your science fair idea, keep like looking up past ideas to give you some inspiration. Try and, come up with a spark for a new question, that kind of thing. Really try and hone in your idea. And that could be something that you're kind of doing right now, is starting to research like a science fair idea and starting to prepare for it, doing that research, reaching out to some people, because, they're all working virtually as well. So they might have extra time to kind of talk you through an idea. And so you kind of can lay the groundwork for everything now. And then once you have access to a lab or, one-on-one time with a mentor, then you can really hit the ground running. So that might be something to consider doing right now. And as I kind of already mentioned, summer research camps can also be a great way to get research experience. Something like, the Research Science Institute at MIT, or the Clark Scholars Program at Texas Tech University. Those are all really great programs, and, better, they're free. So a lot of these summer camp programs can cost thousands of dollars per week to attend. And of course, you'll probably have like a really great experience and really enjoyable, and you'll learn a lot. But, just because you paid thousands of dollars doesn't make it better than a free one or a low-cost one. And actually, the low-cost ones, as you might guess, are more competitive. Like RSI only accepts 80 students. Clark Scholars only accepts 12. And we've actually interviewed both of their, admissions officers. And, the BSMD students that we see are going to be very similar to a student who's a Clark Scholar or RSI, attending RSI, because, these students are kind of pointy. They have really, deep interest in one or two things. And of course, like right now, you might be thinking it's impossible to get, a lab. I can't get research in a lab or anything like that. Like you might have had some plan for the summer even. Um, but it is actually possible. I had one student who, had a lab lined up for the summer, and of course, coronavirus happened. But he emailed her again and asked if he could, do virtual work. So he spent the summer doing virtual lab experience, research experience. So of course, it's not the same, but it doesn't. It still shows initiative. He still, is learning things. He's still forming a relationship with a mentor, and maybe next year she'll let him come back then because he already has that, relationship with her too. Now, shadowing is kind of harder right now. Oh, yeah, I'm going to type this in right now. So this one is this. Let me pull up their names. They are called the Clark Scholars Program, and this summer, I cannot remember. Research Science Institute are those two. Those are those two free programs, and their applications definitely open in I think November or December, and then they'll close in January, February. So you do have to kind of prepare ahead of time for those. So those are those two summer activities that are free, and there's tons of other options too. Those are just kind of two that I have on the top of my head. So back to what I was saying about research, it is possible still to get it. It can't hurt to get it. So even maybe if school is online for the fall, or you kind of have like a hybrid model for your high school, you might see if you can also get some virtual lab experience going on. It could be very possible. So camps are going to be virtual. You can plan your science projects. You can reach out to your local universities or colleges, or at that point you really wouldn't have to be, locked into a location. But I think it's kind of better to stay local, to stay, if possible, just because afterwards, once coronavirus has been lifted, maybe you can go in there and get some actual experience in the lab. So that's kind of something to think about, I think, too, is kind of staying virtual. So yeah, shadowing. So yeah, shadowing is going to be really hard right now. And honestly, I don't think a lot of doctors will let the students shadow right now. And so that's going to be, that's okay if you aren't able to get the shadowing experience right now. But if you can do it in the future, it's kind of really important because they want to know that you are at least serious about becoming a doctor, you understand what the role of doctor is, and then you should spend time shadowing. So if you can't shadow, maybe at least like you speak to a doctor, you are able to ask them about their day-to-day life. You talk to several different specialists. You talk to an MD, you talk to a DO, you talk to a general practitioner, you talk to a surgeon. There's a lot of different people you should be talking to during this time, even if you can't shadow. You just want to make sure that you understand the pace, the expectations, responsibilities, the workload that a doctor has to undertake. Because after all, how can you commit to becoming a doctor if you don't know what the job entails? So in a normal time, if you're trying to find a shadowing experience, you should start within your network. Maybe talk to your pediatrician or family doctor. And if they can't accommodate your request, ask them maybe if they know of someone who could, if they can, recommend someone, or, reach out to a local hospital or clinics and ask them if they'll allow you to shadow a doctor. And, like I said, if worse comes to worse, if you aren't able to actually shadow right now, because a lot of places you just aren't allowed to, just make sure that you ask them if you can talk to them for a couple, virtually, ask them a couple questions, and, make sure that you're really appreciative of the time that they're giving, because now is a really stressful and busy time for our doctors. And also, it's really important to volunteer. Long-term commitment to volunteering is kind of more important than just doing one or two school activities during the school year. Start volunteering, a few hours right now, virtually, and then kind of continue throughout the school year. Admissions officers will look at how long you've done it and what time you spent doing it as well. So by starting earlier, you can build, a strong volunteer resume. And, like I said before, let me send you guys a list that I have right here of some ideas for, let's see if it will go through. I don't know if that went. Let's see if it pops up. For some, ideas of what you can be doing during the coronavirus era. And I'll also send that in the follow-up email, but you could do Meals on Wheels, food banks, foster an animal or a pet. You could plant a garden, do a food drive. A lot of the nursing homes aren't allowing guests, so you could send letters. You could do a virtual internship, take an online course, or even volunteer for a political candidate if you want. So I'll send all of those to you guys. Let's see. If it didn't send, I'll send it in the follow-up email. I'm having some trouble sending it right now. But I'll do that for you guys. Now, if you guys have any other questions about activities, just shoot them to me in the chat. Now, I'm kind of just going to breeze through this because we've already covered a lot of it in the presentation so far, just kind of naturally. But it's important to really remember that the BSMD application process is much more intense than the traditional application process. It takes longer, as I mentioned. For example, you are going to have to write the undergraduate application and then also the the BSMD essays as well. You might have to fill out several applications too, so it's just kind of something to consider. As well as the seats are just much smaller. And I do have a questions about the seats. As the seats are limited, how can Moon Prep help? So that's a really great question about that. So the way that we can really help is a lot of the ways is through our essays. Because a lot of the times, like I said before, students will have great GPAs, great SATs, great transcripts, but it ultimately comes down to also how you're portraying yourself and your maturity level, your compassion, your empathy. All of those kind of things are really important things to be showing as well. And so that's what working with a counselor like Moon Prep, like at Moon Prep, can really help. We help you stand out. We help you showcase who you are. When you work with us, we can really help you not only, create a really great BSMD list, looking strategically at which programs you should be applying to, because as you can see from this list, our BSMD students apply to 17 schools, whereas a traditional applicant might apply just to 10. And so they might apply to 7 to 10 BSMD programs, and the rest is, maybe an Ivy League or a safety or, something along those lines. And so those are all kind of things to consider about how a counselor can help you. And actually what makes Moon Prep so unique is we are one of the few counselor groups who do BSMD admission. So a lot of people will just do kind of general counseling, and we focus all on BSMD. About 80% of our students are either BSMD, DO, or a direct dental or a medical school applicant. So that's really what our focus is. So we do a lot of work with our students who are just like all of you guys here, who want to apply to BSMD students, because it is a little bit more intense than the traditional applicants, as you can kind of see. And I see some questions here about, does it help to get first aid certified as a high schooler? In itself, just getting certified, is it super helpful? It's kind of the same thing as if you volunteer once. Is it helpful? I mean, kind of. You might learn something new, but maybe then you could get, you wouldn't be able to be EMT certified, but I can't quite remember what the name is. The trainees for EMTs, you might be able to do something like that. That might be, a way to take that interest a step further. Just getting the certification isn't going to be the reason why you get in, or not having it is going to be the reason you don't get in. So will it help? Maybe, as long as you're also doing something else with it, I think is kind of an important thing. And that kind of goes along with the extracurricular activities. So they do need to be more focused on science or medicine, and that, getting that certification can be a really great way to be like a jumping off point to finding more of that information. So you could get certified for sure, but like, for example, last year I had a girl who was first aid certified, but then she also would, shadow on ambulance rides and participate. So she got a lot of really great hands-on clinical experience and saw a lot of, things that a lot of 17, 16, 18-year-olds don't see, or, 19 and 20-year-olds too. So she really had some great experiences through being an EMT. I can't quite remember what the name, the trainee program is. So that might be something to look into. So let's see. I think I covered that one. Which BSMD programs also accept international students? So there is a list. Let me see if I can find it really quickly. It's hard to remember off the top of my head, but there are some. I believe Boston University accepts BSMD international students. There are some international programs, for example, New Jersey Institute of Technology. They partner with the American University of Antigua, and there's at St. George's University in Granada, they also do a BSMD program. So those kind of programs will accept international students, but there are really a limited number who do it. And I can't remember more off the top of my head, I'm sorry, but those are the ones for sure that I can think of for international students. Let's see, I think I got most of the other questions. And this is another one related to activities. This question says, should there be a story or theme between the activities for it to be meaningful? No, I don't think so. I have a student who does ping pong, he does debate, he did research, he did shadowing. You're not going to word vomit all of those activities into one essay. When you're writing your essay, maybe you would pick the ones that do have a coherent story or theme in your personal statement, in your why doctor. So it's okay to have really crazy outside interests. You don't have to be singular on one thing. You can do other things for sure, especially if it's something you're passionate about. But whenever you're writing your personal statement, finding that theme between your activities is really, really important. So that is something actually that we work with our students quite a bit, is finding that theme, finding the common thread that we can have these one activities and, bring them all together to discuss, showing off those qualities, showing off the maturity, showing off, the empathy and the compassion and the drive and the leadership, all those qualities, finding that theme to make sure that it's the best essay possible. So I hope that answers your question. You see, we have another question here about what would be considered a good rank for the BSMD program. Ultimately it comes down to who you are, and also it means undergraduate versus medical school. And a lot of it also comes down to what type of doctor you want to be, because some doctors or some medical schools just don't produce a certain type of doctor very often. So that's what I always tell my BSMD students to kind of think about, what kind of doctor do you want to be? Do you want to be a certain specialty? And then look at the type of doctors at the medical school, the residency programs they're getting into, and see, does that seem like a possibility, that you're not shutting doors before you even get there. And of course things could change, but I think that when deciding the rank of the BSMD program, it does ultimately come down to the student. There's no, good rank. It's just really, I think it's kind of a personal decision too. So hopefully that kind of answers your question. But do I have any more questions? I'd be happy to answer some more questions. I know we've gone about an hour, but totally willing to answer more questions. If you guys have any, you can go ahead and type them in as well. And while you guys maybe are thinking or typing, I just want to share with you guys a special offer we have. So we'll be doing this offer until Sunday. It's $150 for a personalized college admissions advice. So you'll have 1 hour with a Moon Prep counselor, and this hour you can spend on brainstorming, your personal statement, or finding the right BSMD program for us or for you, or help with a supplemental essay or your why doctor essay. You can spend that 1 hour however you see fit, and just make sure to email me. And you can see my emails down there below. It's lindsay@moonprep.com. And I'll be sending everyone who signed up on Eventbrite an email and reminding you guys to take advantage of this offer as well. You can just send me an email and, we can get you started. And if you are interested in longer packages, more intense, long-term help with us, you can also send me an email, lindsay@moonprep.com. I can go through more one-on-one talk about our services and how we can individually help you. Because like I said, we do really personalized services, and we make sure that all of our students are matched up with a counselor and, work with them to make sure that they are finding the right path to medicine for them and getting into BSMD programs. Okay, so I see that we have a couple more questions. Perfect. Okay, so this is a good one. What do I do if I'm a rising junior and a very well-rounded student? I mean, that's completely okay. And, that's not going to be the end of the world either. It's all about how you position yourself and how you talk about yourself in the personal statement. So if you've done kind of everything that everyone else has done, maybe you spend this next year, taking those interests to the next level, or, even if you are a rising senior, trying to take those interests to the next level. Like, how can you evolve your interests to be a little bit more intense? What can you start? What can you create? And it doesn't matter what you're creating. And so maybe like an institute or a, organization like Beta Bowl might be a good organization for you to kind of do something unique, start a business idea, creating an idea for you and kind of running with it. Even if you're, in the beginning stages of your idea when you're applying to colleges, it's okay because you can give them updates throughout it, through the interview process and, throughout the whole system or throughout the whole application process. So if you are well-rounded and you have good grades, that's fine. You still also have time to kind of make yourself a little bit more pointy. But if you're a rising senior and you don't have as much time, that's okay too. Think about the personal statement. Think about what you're saying in the personal statement. Because if you have very similar experiences to everyone else, you want to make sure you're finding a unique story for you. So I would suggest that you really think about how you're portraying yourself in your essays, how you're portraying yourself when it comes to the interview process as well, just to make sure that you're unique and standing out. Think about the thousands of applications they read, how many hours a day they read. So you want to make sure that you are, standing out with your essays. So at the end of the day, thinking about how unique your essays are too is kind of a vital idea. Okay, I see another question. How would coming from an underrepresented state affect our chances, given that we have good stats, grades, extracurriculars, etc.? So that's a great question. So I would say that it can help. Is it going to be the reason you get in? Probably not. But it also really depends on the program, because some programs will only accept students from their states. Some programs will only accept students from a certain area. So if that is, for example, New Mexico has one that is only for students who graduate from a New Mexico high school, and there's a Kansas one only for students, graduating from Kansas. So if that's you, it might be a good idea to look into those because you just have less competition. But for your question about underrepresented state affect your chances, I think maybe a minuscule amount, a little bit amount. It also depends on the state, depends on you, depends on your other stats. It's hard to give a good answer based on a little bit of information. But, like I said, it's a holistic process. So they'll look at it and they'll definitely consider it. But will that be the reason why you get in over someone else? Maybe not, but it can't hurt you, that's for sure. Okay, I see another question. And if you guys have any more questions, feel free to shoot them over to me. And you can also send me an email. My email's down below, the lindsay@moonprep.com. But I'll answer this last question. And if we don't have any more, then we can say goodbye. So this question is, I heard from others that BSMD programs take away from the college experience. How true do you think this statement is? And so this was actually one of the things I mentioned in the disadvantages, because I think for accelerated programs especially, it does kind of take away from the college experience. You might be spending just 2 to 3 years in your undergraduate program, and and then switching over to the medical school, you're a lot younger than your, peers. And so it can be a little bit off-putting if everyone else, is different age than you and able to do different things. And for an accelerated program, especially like a 6-year program, you're likely going over the summer. So you don't get a break for 6 years. It's not like, you're just going for, those 6 years and that's it. No, you likely won't be able to study abroad because you just won't have time. If you want to take a summer off, that's also probably not likely. So all of these things are kind of important to consider, that you are kind of doing nose to the grindstone for those 6 and even the 7-year BSMD programs. Now, a traditional BSMD program, I think it does depend on the BSMD program. You do have like a little bit more of like a cohort, of course, because you're, often very few in number. And so you might have a different college experience than others. I think most medical school students, you have to work hard. You have to prioritize school. You have to prioritize volunteering and, your activities and research and shadowing. You're still doing all these things that you're doing now, but you'll have to do them like on a grander scale when you're in college if you're applying to medical school. So these are all kind of things to consider that, will it take away from the college experience? I mean, maybe, but I think that in general, applying to medical school, you're not, you are working a lot harder than your average student. So that's also kind of something to consider, that it is a lot of work. Okay, hopefully I answered that question. So like I said before, if you want to take advantage of that $150 per hour offer, feel free to email me. You can take advantage of it anytime, but just make sure to email me before the 12th. And if you do want more information on like our bigger package and more information on our services, you can either check out our website, moonprep.com, or just email me directly and you can get it straight from the source. I can explain everything a little bit better. And then, like I said too, our book is coming out very soon. So as a thank you to everyone for attending, I'll definitely send you guys the link to the Kindle book that you can download for free. And that should be this month. So once it gets there, you'll be able to see it. It has all the programs. It has a lot of information about residency requirements, minimum GPAs, average GPAs, every single program. Like I said, 250 pages of text to help you understand everything you need to know about the BSMD program. And like I said, any other questions, email me. I'll email y'all from Eventbrite. And if you have any other questions or you weren't on Eventbrite, just shoot me an email. So I can say goodbye. Thank you guys all for your great questions, and I'll see you guys next time. In about a month, I think on the 10th of August, we'll have another webinar kind of focused more towards rising seniors, and that one will be about writing the personal statement. So we'll be doing another one then, and then we'll have a couple more. So check out our Eventbrite page and our website as well for some upcoming events. But until next time, I'll see you guys later. Oh, I see I got one more question. So to this person, you can just send me, I'll put my email down below. Hopefully it works this time. I don't think it is. Oh, it is working. So yeah, Lindsay@moonprep.com is my email. So you can just give me an email right there. You can purchase that 1-hour promotion. We can talk it through. Just shoot me an email and we can go from there. Thank you guys all for your kind words. And any other questions, feel free to email me there. You can obviously re-watch the presentation if you guys forget some of this information. It'll all be there. And I look forward to seeing you guys next time.